Jake Bennett pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor of Meridian Station, his footsteps echoing in the silence. It was 3 in the morning, and this was his favorite time to work. No diplomats rushing past him like he was invisible. No alien delegates complaining about smudges on the windows. Just him, his mop, and the gentle hum of the life support systems. He'd been doing this job for 5 years now. 5 years of night shifts, 5 years of scrubbing floors while the rest of the galaxy conducted their important business during the day. Most people would find it depressing, but Jake didn't mind. After his divorce, he'd needed something simple. Something that didn't require him to think too much or feel too much. Besides, the pay was decent. Good enough to send money back to Earth for his daughter's college fund. That's what mattered. Jake was whistling an old tune when he noticed the supply closet door was slightly open. That was odd. He always locked them after restocking. He approached carefully and pushed the door wider. Someone was in there. A Velkara woman sat huddled in the corner, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. She was trembling, her arms wrapped around her knees. The Velkara were a common sight on the station. They did most of the menial work, the jobs nobody else wanted. Other species treated them like furniture, barely acknowledging their existence. Jake had always thought that was wrong, but what could a janitor do about intergalactic prejudice? "Hey," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay in there?" She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. For a moment, he thought she might bolt. But she just shook her head slightly, then looked down again. Jake knelt down outside the closet, keeping some distance between them. He wasn't a big guy, but he knew he could seem intimidating to someone who was already scared. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head again. "Hungry?" This time, she hesitated before nodding. Just barely, but he caught it. Jake glanced down and spotted a broken ration chip on the floor beside her. Those chips were how station workers accessed their meals from the dispensers. Without one, you couldn't eat. Getting a replacement usually took days of bureaucratic nonsense. He sighed and sat down on the floor, pulling his lunch bag out from his cart. His ex-wife used to pack his lunches before everything fell apart. He'd kept up the tradition himself, finding it oddly comforting. Tonight's dinner was a turkey sandwich with lettuce and tomato, an apple, and his trusty thermos of coffee. "Here," Jake said, sliding the bag across the floor toward her. "I already ate earlier." It was a lie. His stomach had been growling for the past hour. But looking at this woman, so thin and frightened, he knew she needed it more than he did. She stared at the bag like it might explode. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in a while. Jake shrugged. "Because you're hungry and I've got food. Doesn't need to be more complicated than that." "But I am Velkara," she said, as if that explained everything. "So? You still gotta eat, don't you?" Jake stood up slowly, brushing off his pants. "Look, I've got to finish my route, but you can stay here tonight if you need to. I won't tell anyone. Just make sure you're gone before the morning shift starts at 6, okay?" She reached for the bag with trembling hands and pulled out the sandwich. When she took the first bite, Jake saw her eyes close in relief. "I'm Jake, by the way," he said. "If you need anything else, I'm usually around this sector at night." "Elara," she whispered between bites. "My name is Elara." "Nice to meet you, Elara. You take care now." Jake grabbed his cart and headed back into the corridor, leaving her to eat in peace. As he walked away, he wondered what had happened to her. The Velkara on the station usually stayed in groups, watching out for each other. For one to be alone, hiding in a closet, something must have gone really wrong. But Jake had learned a long time ago not to pry into other people's business. Everyone had their own problems. Sometimes the best thing you could do was just be kind and move on. He spent the next few hours finishing his cleaning route, his mind occasionally drifting back to the frightened woman in the closet. When he passed by again near the end of his shift, she was gone. The only evidence she'd been there was his empty lunch bag, neatly folded and left on the shelf. Jake smiled slightly and tossed the bag into his cart. As he headed toward the locker room to clock out, he noticed something unusual through one of the observation windows. Lights in the distance. Lots of them. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their engines flaring as they decelerated. Big ships. Military ships, by the look of them. The comm system crackled to life overhead. "Attention all station personnel. This is Security Chief Rodriguez. We have multiple Velkara military vessels requesting permission to dock. They are conducting a search operation. All staff should cooperate fully with any inquiries. That is all." Jake frowned. "A search operation? For what? He shrugged and kept walking. Whatever it was, it probably had nothing to do with him. He was just the janitor. Nobody important. Nobody who mattered in the grand scheme of things. He had no idea that the woman he'd just fed was the reason those warships were there. Or that his simple act of kindness was about to change the course of galactic history. Jake saw Elara again 3 nights later. He was cleaning the observation deck when he heard a soft noise behind one of the air recycling units. Most people would have ignored it, maybe reported it to maintenance. But Jake had learned to recognize the sound of someone trying very hard not to be found. He walked over casually, pushing his cart like he was just doing his regular rounds. You know, he said to the air recycler, this is a terrible hiding spot. These things heat up like crazy. You'll roast back there. There was a long pause, then Elara emerged, looking even more exhausted than before. Her uniform was dirty and torn at the sleeve. Oh hey, Jake said, keeping his tone light. Fancy meeting you here. You eaten today? She shook her head, and Jake noticed her hands were shaking again. He pulled out his dinner without a word. Tonight it was a ham and cheese sandwich, some crackers, and a packet of cookies his daughter had sent him from Earth. I cannot keep taking your food, Elara said quietly, but her eyes were fixed on the sandwich. Sure you can. I pack extra anyway. Another lie, but a useful one. Besides, I'm trying to lose weight. You're doing me a favor. She took the food, and they sat together in silence for a while. Jake pretended to fiddle with his cleaning supplies while she ate. The station hummed around them, oblivious to their small moment of peace. Why are you hiding? Jake finally asked. If you don't mind me asking. You in some kind of trouble? Elara was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. I saw something, she finally said. Something I should not have seen. There are people looking for me. Jake nodded. That made sense. The station was crawling with security lately. They'd been searching every section, checking credentials, asking questions. The whole place felt tense, like everyone was waiting for something bad to happen. The maintenance tunnels, Jake said. Section 7. There's an access panel behind the water filtration system. Nobody goes down there except me, and I only check it once a week. You could lay low there for a while. You would help me? Even knowing I am in trouble? Jake shrugged. I don't know what you saw or who's after you. But you don't seem like a bad person. Just someone who's scared. I've been scared before. It sucks. Over the next week, this became their routine. Jake would find Elara in different spots around the station, always moving, always hiding. Each time, he'd share whatever food he'd brought. Sometimes they'd talk, sometimes they'd just sit in comfortable silence. He learned little things about her. She liked sweet things, especially chocolate. She'd never seen real rain, only read about it. She asked a lot of questions about Earth, about humanity, about things Jake had never really thought about before. Your people do not have servants, she asked one night. Well, we have people who work service jobs, like me, Jake explained. But we're not servants. We get paid. We can quit if we want. We're not born into it. But surely some humans are considered better than others? Higher status. I mean, yeah, we've got rich people and poor people. Famous people and nobodies like me. But legally, we're all supposed to be equal. Took us a long time to get there, though. We messed up a lot along the way. Elara seemed fascinated by this. Your species fought wars over equality. Yeah, some of our ugliest ones. Turns out people really hate giving up power, even when it's the right thing to do. Jake offered her half his sandwich. But we got there eventually. Most places, anyway. Do you think other species could learn this? Could change? I don't see why not. If humans could figure it out, anybody can. We're pretty stubborn and stupid sometimes. She laughed at that, a real laugh that lit up her whole face. It was the first time Jake had seen her smile. Meanwhile, the station was becoming more chaotic by the day. The rumors were flying everywhere. The Velkara Empress had disappeared, and their entire empire was in an uproar. Some said she'd been kidnapped. Others claimed she'd been assassinated. A few whispered she'd run away. Jake heard it all while he worked. People talked around janitors like they weren't even there. He'd learned more gossip in 5 years of pushing a mop than most intelligence agents probably gathered in their whole careers. The Kreth Consortium was being blamed for the Empress's disappearance. They were a powerful trading alliance that controlled a huge chunk of the galaxy's economy. The Velkara military had surrounded their space stations, demanding answers. War seemed inevitable. Ships were being recalled. Diplomats were fleeing. The station that had once been a symbol of peaceful cooperation was turning into a powder keg. But Jake kept doing his job. Kept cleaning floors. Kept finding Elara in her hiding spots and making sure she ate. One night, he brought her his jacket. The station's environmental systems were acting up, and some sections were getting cold. "I cannot take this," she protested. "It is yours. I've got another one in my locker. You need it more." He draped it over her shoulders. It was too big, swallowing her small frame, but she pulled it tight around herself. "Jake," she said softly. "Why do you do this? You do not know me. You risk your job helping me hide. Why?" He thought about it for a moment. "My daughter's about your age," he finally said. "If she was alone and scared somewhere out in the galaxy, I'd hope someone would share their sandwich with her. Help her out. That's all." Elara looked at him with those wide eyes, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw tears forming. But she blinked them away. "Your daughter is lucky to have you as a father." "Yeah, well, my ex-wife might disagree with you there." Jake stood up, stretching his back. "I better get back to work. You stay warm, okay? And Elara? Maybe stay out of Section 3 tomorrow night. I heard security's doing a sweep there." "Thank you, Jake. For everything." He waved it off and went back to his cart, not knowing that the woman he was protecting with sandwiches and spare jackets was the most wanted person in the entire galaxy. The breaking news hit every screen on the station at the same time. Jake was mopping the mess hall when the emergency broadcast interrupted the usual background noise. He looked up at the massive display wall, his mop dripping forgotten water onto the floor. The Kreth Consortium spokesperson, a tall insectoid creature with too many eyes, was addressing the entire galaxy. Behind her, footage played on loop. Security camera recordings. Docking bay manifests. Flight logs. "We categorically deny any involvement in the disappearance of Empress Valkyra," the spokesperson clicked and buzzed. "Our investigation has revealed the truth. The Empress fled voluntarily. She abandoned her people." More footage played. A figure in royal Valkyra robes boarding a small shuttle. Alone. No guards, no attendants. The timestamp showed it was from 3 weeks ago, right before everything went crazy. "Furthermore," the Kreth continued, "we have obtained personal logs from the Empress herself, recorded before her departure. With permission from the Valkyra Council, we will now play these recordings." The screen shifted. It was Elara's voice, but different. More formal. More tired. "I cannot continue this lie," the recording said. "We speak of harmony and enlightenment, but we enslave our own kind. The servant caste lives in poverty while the royals feast. We are hypocrites, and I am the greatest hypocrite of all. I wear a crown built on the suffering of my own people. I cannot do this anymore. I will not." The recording ended. The station fell into stunned silence. Jake stood frozen, the mop handle slipping from his grip. That voice. He knew that voice. He'd been listening to it every night for 2 weeks, sharing sandwiches and talking about earth rain and chocolate cookies. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." Elara wasn't just some scared worker who'd seen something she shouldn't have. She was the Empress. The actual Empress that entire fleets were searching for. The person whose disappearance had brought the galaxy to the brink of war. And he'd been hiding her. Feeding her his lunches. Lending her his jacket. Jake's mind raced. The Valkyra military was fracturing according to the news. Some commanders still wanted war with the Kreth, refusing to believe their Empress would abandon them. Others were calling for reform, saying her words proved the system was broken. The Empire was tearing itself apart. And the woman at the center of it all was hiding somewhere in his maintenance tunnels, probably hungry and definitely terrified. Jake grabbed his cart and moved faster than he'd moved in years. He had to find her. Had to talk to her. Had to figure out what the hell he'd gotten himself into. But he wasn't the only one looking. Security had tripled overnight. They weren't just checking credentials anymore. They were searching everywhere, scanning everything. The station administrator had offered a massive reward for information leading to the Empress. Enough money to set someone up for life. Enough to pay for Jake's daughter's entire education and then some. All he had to do was make one call. Jake found himself standing outside a communication terminal, staring at the blinking light. His hands were shaking. One call. That's all it would take. His daughter could go to any university she wanted. He could retire, maybe even reconcile with his ex-wife, show her he'd made something of himself. One call. He thought about Elara, huddled in that supply closet, so scared and so hungry. He thought about her laugh when he'd made a dumb joke about Earth weather. He thought about how she'd looked at him when he'd given her his jacket, like it was the most precious gift she'd ever received. Jake walked away from the terminal. He found her in Section 7, exactly where he'd told her to hide. But she wasn't alone anymore. 2 security officers were methodically checking every access panel, every hiding spot. They were getting closer. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. He pushed his cart forward, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. "Evening, fellas," he said cheerfully. "You guys looking for something?" The taller officer barely glanced at him. "Official security business. Move along, janitor." "Sure thing. Just need to check the water filtration system real quick. Maintenance logged a pressure warning. You know how it is, all this extra traffic on the station, systems getting overworked." He started fiddling with panels, making a show of checking gauges and taking readings. The officers watched him for a moment, then went back to their search. To them, he was just part of the background. Just the janitor doing his boring janitor job. Jake worked his way closer to where he knew Ilara was hiding. As he bent down to check a lower panel, he whispered, "Stay quiet. Stay hidden. I'll get them out of here." He didn't know if she could hear him. Didn't know if she was even there anymore. Jake stood up and made a big show of cursing. "Ah, damn it. The main valve's in Section 8. I'm reading the wrong schematic. My mistake, officers. Sorry to bother you." He shuffled off with his cart, hoping they'd follow. They didn't. They kept searching. Jake's mind raced. He needed a distraction. Something big enough to pull security away but not so big it would hurt anyone. He headed to Section 5 and did something he'd never done in 5 years of faithful service. He accidentally triggered a minor coolant leak. Nothing dangerous, just enough to set off alarms and require an immediate response. Every available security officer would have to help evacuate the area and contain the leak. Sure enough, within minutes, the alarms blared. The officers in Section 7 rushed off to help. Jake hurried back and tapped on the access panel. "Ilara? They're gone. You need to move. Now." The panel opened slowly. Ilara emerged, and her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "You know," she said quietly. "It wasn't a question." "Yeah. I know. Saw the broadcast." Jake looked at her, really looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, more fragile. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have helped me if you knew?" Jake thought about it. Honestly thought about it. "Yeah," he finally said. "Yeah, I would have. Maybe would have packed better sandwiches though. You know, for royalty." She laughed, but it came out as a sob. "I have destroyed everything. My empire is fracturing. War is coming. And I am hiding in maintenance tunnels, taking food from a kind man who deserves better than this." "Hey," Jake said firmly. "Don't talk about my friend like that. You needed help. I helped. That's what friends do." "Friends," she repeated softly, like the word was foreign. "Yeah. Friends." Jake checked his watch. The coolant leak would be contained soon. "Look, we need to figure out what you want to do here. You can't hide forever. And honestly, I'm running out of good hiding spots." Ilara wiped her eyes. "I do not know what to do. If I return, nothing changes. The system continues. My people suffer. If I do not return, there will be war. The Kreth will be destroyed, and thousands will die." "What if you went back different though?" Jake asked. "You've been down here with us regular folks for weeks now. You've seen how things could be different. You think one person can change an entire empire? I think you already started changing it. That recording? You told the truth. That takes guts. Now you just gotta follow through." Ilara looked at him for a long moment. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's probably gonna be the hardest thing you ever do. But you're not alone anymore. You've got at least one friend in your corner. Even if he's just a janitor who makes mediocre sandwiches." For the first time in weeks, Ilara smiled with something like hope in her eyes. They hid in the water treatment plant for 2 days while the station tore itself apart looking for her. Jake had brought everything he could sneak past security. Blankets, food, water bottles, even a small portable heater because the treatment plant was always freezing. He'd called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years, claiming food poisoning. His supervisor had been suspicious but couldn't prove anything. During those 2 days, they talked. Really talked. Not the rushed whispers of their previous meetings, but long conversations that stretched into hours. Tell me about your wars, Ilara said on the first night, wrapped in Jake's spare blanket. The ones you fought over equality. How did your people find the courage to change? Jake leaned back against the cold metal wall, thinking. I don't know if courage is the right word. Desperation, maybe. Things got so bad that people couldn't ignore it anymore. We had slavery in my country a long time ago. Took a massive war to end it. Over 500,000 people died. 500,000? Ilara's voice was horrified. Your own people killed each other? Yeah. Brother against brother sometimes. It was ugly. Really ugly. Jake pulled out a granola bar and split it with her. But the thing is, even after that war ended, equality didn't just happen. Took another 100 years of fighting. Different kind of fighting, mostly. Protests, laws, people refusing to accept the old ways. And now? Your world is equal now. Jake laughed bitterly. No. We're better, but we're not there yet. Probably never will be completely. But we keep trying. That's the important part. We don't give up just because it's hard. Ilara was quiet for a long moment. My people have maintained the caste system for 3,000 years. It is woven into everything we are. How do I unweave 3,000 years of history? One thread at a time, I guess. Jake shrugged. Look, I'm just a janitor. I don't know anything about running an empire. But I know that every big change starts with one person deciding enough is enough. You already did that when you left. Now you just gotta finish what you started. I am afraid, she admitted quietly. What if I fail? What if I make things worse? Then you'll fail. And yeah, things might get worse before they get better. But doing nothing? That's a guaranteed failure. At least if you try, there's a chance. They spent hours talking about Earth, about humanity's messy journey toward equality. Jake told her about the civil rights movement, about women's suffrage, about all the times regular people had stood up and demanded better. He wasn't a historian, just a guy who'd paid attention in school and read some books. But Ilara listened to every word like he was teaching her sacred texts. Your species fascinates me, she said. You are so violent, so flawed, yet you keep choosing to be better. How? Because the alternative sucks. Jake smiled. I mean, think about it. Living in a world where people are judged by what they are born as instead of who they are? That's exhausting. For everyone. Even the people on top. They gotta maintain all these lies, all these systems. It's easier to just treat everyone decent. On the second day, everything changed. Jake's communicator buzzed with an emergency alert. He read it twice, his face going pale. What is it? Ilara asked. The Kreth Consortium. They've issued an ultimatum. They're saying that if the Velkara military doesn't stand down in 48 hours, they'll consider it an act of war. And they're starting with this station. Jake looked up at her. They're going to destroy Meridian. Everyone on it. They're claiming it's the only way to prevent a larger war. They would kill thousands of innocents. They're scared. Scared people do stupid things. Jake stood up, pacing. We need to get you to your ships. You need to stop this. How? Even if I reach them, what do I say? Sorry for running away, please do not start a war. They will either imprison me or ignore me. No, Jake said firmly. You tell them the truth. All of it. You tell them why you left, what you learned, what you want to change. You give them something to believe in instead of something to fight about. Jake, I am one person. I cannot. Yes, you can. You're not just one person. You're their empress. And more than that, you're someone who gives a damn. That counts for something. Ilara stood, letting the blanket fall away. For the first time since he'd met her, she stood straight, her shoulders back. If I do this, I need your help. I do not know your station systems. I do not know how to reach my ships without being captured first. Jake grinned. Well, lucky for you, I know every pipe, every tunnel, and every maintenance shaft in this place. I've been cleaning them for 5 years. They planned it out on a piece of scrap paper. The Velkara ships were docked on the far side of the station, in the diplomatic bays. Security would be thickest there. But Jake knew a route through the maintenance corridors that bypassed most of the checkpoints. It would be tight, uncomfortable, and dangerous, but it was possible. There's one problem, Jake said. The final access corridor to the docking bay. There's no way around it. We'll have to go through security there. They'll scan everyone. Then we will be caught. Yeah, probably. Jake rubbed his face. Unless we cause enough chaos that they're too busy to check carefully. What kind of chaos? Jake's grin turned mischievous. The kind only a janitor can cause. I know where every critical system on this station is located. I know which ones are fragile. And I know exactly how to make a whole lot of alarms go off at once without actually hurting anyone. You would sabotage your own station. To prevent a war and save a few thousand lives? Yeah, I'd do a lot more than that. Jake started gathering their supplies. We leave in 2 hours. That'll give me time to set everything up. When the alarms start going off, we run. We don't stop for anything. Got it? Ilara nodded, and Jake saw something new in her eyes. Determination. Hope. Maybe even a little bit of courage. Jake, she said as he prepared to leave. When this is over, if we survive, I want you to come with me. To the homeworld. I will need advisors who understand what I am trying to build. People who see others as equals, not subjects. Jake laughed. I'm a janitor, not a diplomat. You are my friend. And you are the wisest person I have ever met. Please. Consider it. He looked at her, this woman who'd been the most powerful person in her empire but had needed a sandwich and a kind word more than anything. Let's survive the next few hours first. Then we'll talk about job offers. 2 hours later, every alarm on Meridian Station started screaming at once. Environmental warnings, fire alerts, pressure failures, coolant leaks. Nothing actually dangerous, but the security systems couldn't tell that. In the chaos, 2 figures in maintenance uniforms slipped through the corridors, heading for the docking bays where warships waited and the fate of the galaxy hung in balance. Jake had cleaned his last floor. Now it was time to see if a janitor and an empress could stop a war. The alarms were still screaming when they reached the final corridor. Jake's plan had worked almost too well. Security officers were running everywhere, trying to figure out which emergency was real and which wasn't. The station's automated systems were going haywire, reporting catastrophic failures that didn't actually exist. But there were still 2 guards at the entrance to the diplomatic docking bay. No way around them. Just act natural, Jake whispered, adjusting his maintenance uniform. He'd found one for Ilara too, though it hung loose on her smaller frame. We're responding to a coolant leak in Bay 7. They walked forward, Jake pushing a cart full of tools, Ilara carrying a diagnostic scanner like she'd been doing this job for years. The guards barely looked up from their tablets, too focused on the chaos erupting throughout the station. Maintenance, Jake said casually. Got a leak in Bay 7. Yeah, go ahead, one guard waved them through without even checking their IDs. They were 10 feet past when someone shouted behind them. Wait. You too. Jake's heart stopped. Ilara froze beside him. A tall Kreth security officer was pointing at them, his 4 eyes narrowed in suspicion. I need to see your clearance codes. Now. This was it. They were caught. Jake's mind raced through options, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. 20 feet away was the docking bay where Velkara ships waited, but it might as well have been on another planet. Ilara stepped forward before Jake could stop her. She pulled back her hood, letting her face show clearly under the harsh corridor lights. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow. She stood straight, no longer hunched in fear, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of command. I am Empress Valkyra of the Velkara Empire. I am alive, and I am done hiding. The corridor went silent. Even the alarms seemed to quiet for a moment. The Kreth officers' mandibles clicked in shock. The human guards reached for their weapons but didn't draw them. Everyone just stared. I need to address my people, Ilara continued. I need to address everyone. Can you help me, or will you try to stop me? The Kreth officer looked at Jake, then back at Ilara. The whole galaxy is looking for you. There's a war about to start over you. I know. That is why I must speak. Now. Before more people die because of my cowardice. Something in her voice, in the way she stood, made the officer step aside. Bay 7 has a communication array. It's connected to the station's main broadcast system. But if this is some kind of trick. It is not a trick, Ilara said. I give you my word as Empress. They rushed to Bay 7, and suddenly they had an escort instead of pursuers. Word was spreading through the station like wildfire. The Empress. She's here. She's alive. The docking bay was massive, designed to handle the largest diplomatic vessels. Through the observation windows, Jake could see the Velkara fleet. Hundreds of ships, all bristling with weapons, all waiting for an order to attack. A young technician helped them access the communication system, his hands shaking as he routed them into every channel, every frequency. Station communications, fleet channels, even the emergency broadcast network that reached across multiple sectors. You'll be broadcasting to billions, the technician said. Maybe trillions. Every ship, every station, every world in range. Are you ready? Elara looked at Jake. I do not know what to say. Tell them the truth, Jake said. Just like you told me. No fancy words, no royal speeches. Just the truth. She nodded and stepped in front of the camera. The broadcast went live. I am Empress Valkyra, she began, and her voice carried across the void to countless worlds. I am alive. I am unharmed. And I have something to say that I should have said long ago. Jake watched from behind the camera as she spoke. She told them everything. Why she fled. What she'd seen. What she'd learned. I ran because I was ashamed, she said, her voice steady. Our empire speaks of enlightenment and harmony, but we enslave our own people. The servant caste lives in poverty while royals live in luxury. We are hypocrites, and I was the greatest hypocrite of all. She gestured to Jake. This human, Jake Bennett, is a janitor on this station. According to my empire's way of thinking, he is nobody important. Just another servant doing menial work. But this nobody shared his last meal with me when I was starving. He protected me when I was hunted. He treated me with dignity when he thought I was just a servant. Jake felt his face burning as billions of eyes suddenly focused on him through the camera. He did not know who I was, Elara continued. He helped me because I was hungry. Because I needed help. Not because of my title or my bloodline, but because I was a person in need. This is what humans call basic decency. And it is something we Velkara have forgotten. She turned to face the camera directly. I am returning to our homeworld. But I return to change everything. The caste system ends today. Every Velkara will be equal under the law. No more servants. No more masters. Only people, judged by who they are, not what they were born as. The communication channels exploded with responses. Some cheered. Some cursed. Some demanded her arrest. I know this will be difficult, Elara said over the noise. I know some of you will resist. 3,000 years of tradition cannot change overnight. But we must try. Because the alternative is to continue living a lie, and I will not do that anymore. She looked directly at the Kreth ships visible through the bay windows. To the Kreth Consortium, I apologize for the chaos my disappearance has caused. But I am here now, and I am taking responsibility. Stand down your weapons. There will be no war. Not over me. Not over misunderstanding. We have much to discuss, but we will do it with words, not weapons. Then she addressed her own fleet. To my commanders, I am ordering you to power down your weapons systems and return to defensive positions only. Anyone who defies this order is committing treason against your empress. I have spoken. The broadcast ended. For a moment, nothing happened. The bay was silent. The fleets hung motionless in space. Then, slowly, one by one, the Velkara warships began powering down their weapons. Not all of them. Jake could see some breaking formation, refusing the order. But most obeyed. The immediate threat of war began to dissolve. The Kreth ships responded in kind, backing away, weapons cooling. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. There would be resistance, rebellion, maybe even civil war. But the immediate crisis was averted. Elara turned to Jake, and she was crying. I did it. We did it. You did it, Jake corrected. I just knew where the broadcast equipment was. A Velkara admiral appeared on the communication screen, his face a mixture of relief and anger. Your Majesty. A ship is being prepared for your return. We have much to discuss. Yes, we do, Elara agreed. And I am bringing an advisor with me. Jake Bennett, human janitor, will be joining my delegation. That's really not necessary, Jake started. It is absolutely necessary, Elara interrupted. You taught me how to see people as equals. Now you will help me teach my empire. Please, Jake. I cannot do this alone. Jake thought about his daughter back on Earth. Thought about his quiet life, his simple routine. Thought about all the reasons he should say no. Then he thought about Elara, sitting terrified in that supply closet, and how one sandwich had somehow led to preventing a war. Okay, he said. But I'm still just a janitor. Don't expect me to wear fancy robes or anything. Elara smiled through her tears. You can wear whatever you wish. You will be the first advisor in Velkara history whose opinion is valued for wisdom, not bloodline. 6 months later, Jake stood in his old sector of Meridian Station, visiting during a diplomatic tour. He wasn't a janitor anymore, though he'd kept his old uniform as a reminder. A group of young Velkara students approached him nervously. They were part of the new exchange program, learning about different cultures, different ways of thinking. "Excuse me," one of them said. "Are you Jake Bennett? The one from the Empress's speech?" "Yeah, that's me," Jake said. "Is it true? Did you really not know she was the Empress?" "Not a clue. Just thought she was someone who needed help." Jake smiled. "You kids hungry? I was about to grab lunch. They still make terrible sandwiches in the mess hall, but they are free." The students looked at each other in amazement. The legendary Jake Bennett, advisor to the Empress, was inviting them to lunch. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because to Jake, it was. As they walked to the mess hall together, one student asked, "What is the secret to changing an empire? How did you do it?" Jake thought about it. "I didn't change anything. Just shared a sandwich with someone who was hungry. Everything else just kind of followed from that." He didn't tell them that sometimes, late at night, he still couldn't quite believe any of it had happened. That a janitor's kindness had somehow helped reshape galactic politics. That simple human decency had been revolutionary to an ancient empire. He just led them to lunch, shared his food, and treated them like the people they were. Because that's what friends do. And in the end, maybe that was the most human thing of all.